At one time, Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Margutika was staying at Varanasi in the deer park at Isipatana. Late one afternoon, Venerable Margutika emerged from his seclusion and approached Venerable Sariputta and asked, Silawata who saw Sariputta Bhikkhuna Katame Dhamma Yoni Somanasi Katapa. Venerable Margutika asked the question, what are the things that a virtuous bhikkhu or monk should carefully attend to? And Venerable Sariputta answered, Silawata who saw Kutika Bhikkhuna, Pinju Padane Khanda, Nichato, Dukhato, Rogato, Piyala, Yoniso Manasi Katapa. Friend Kutika, a virtuous bhikkhu or practitioner should carefully attend to the five aggregates subject to clinging as impermanence, as suffering, as a disease, as non-self. Now you need to understand five aggregates of clinging, five aggregates subject to clinging, upadana khandha. In some translation, it is translated as five aggregates of clinging. Because there is a difference, we should understand the correct meaning of these two phrases. There are two things to be examined. Aggregates, khandha and clinging, upadana. And upadana khandha, the aggregates that are subject to clinging, meaning aggregates that are object of clinging or aggregates that can become objects of clinging. As a meditator, you need to understand upadana clinging. It is very important. Clinging means firmly holding on to something. When clinging to something, we take hold of it and we do not let it go. And Buddha teaches that clinging is of two kinds. Clinging is a mental state. And with that mental state, we cling to objects. Suppose you see something beautiful. When something is beautiful, you desire it and you have a strong craving to possess it. In this case, you cling to the object by strong craving. In other words, things are the object of strong desire, strong craving, or clinging. Deity, wrong view can also cause clingings to object. Sometimes we have wrong view about objects. We think that they are permanent. We think that they possess a self or soul. Or we may have wrong view about ourselves. We may think we have a self, we have a soul, or we may take being to be self or soul. When we apply these kinds of wrong view to objects, we are clinging to them. So we can cling to an object with strong craving or with wrong view. Anything that we can cling to either with strong craving or wrong view is called an aggregate subject to clinging, upadana khanda. What are the things we can cling to? They are the things we see, we hear, we smell, we taste, we touch, and we think of. In other words, we cling to everything in the world. We can cling to everything in the world either by wrong view or by strong craving. When we say this is I, we are clinging by wrong view. But when we say this is mine, this is my body, this is my leg, this is my eye, we are clinging by craving. The things we cling to are technically terms aggregates, khanda in Bali. They are called aggregates because they are understood in groups. Just one unit of matter is called an aggregate, and just one mental state is called an aggregate. So there are 5 aggregates. Meditators need to be familiar. Rupa aggregates or form aggregates, Rupa Khanda, feeling aggregates, Vedana Khanda, perception aggregates, Senya Khanda, evolutionary formation aggregates, Sankara Khanda, and consciousness aggregates, Vijnana Khanda. So Venerable Sariputta said, a virtuous meditators should carefully attend to the 5 aggregates subject to clinging, which are impermanent, suffering, and non-self. The commentary said that we should know 3 things regarding impermanence, nature. What is it that is impermanent? We say impermanent, impermanent, but what is it that we say is impermanent? And what are the signs of being impermanent? What are the marks of being impermanent? Anicca. We should know the characteristics, marks or signs of impermanence, and what is repeated seeing of impermanence. What is anicca, what is aniccata, and what is anicca nupassana. So what is it that is impermanent? When we say impermanent, what do we mean by that? You already know the answer because you are observing, rising, falling, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, stretching, bending, thinking. Every phenomena, every namarupa, every five aggregates subject to clinging, occurring at the six endos, you are observing, and you understand the five aggregates are impermanent and are taught by the Buddha as impermanence. You have yet to see that this is true, but through practice of vipassana meditation, impermanence will eventually be seen. So what is it that is impermanent? You practice and you can answer. The answer is all five aggregates, not just the five aggregates of clinging. There is a difference between aggregates and aggregates of clinging. When we say aggregates of clinging, we mean only the mundane aggregates. But when we say aggregates, the supramundane aggregates are also included. So both mundane and supramundane aggregates are impermanent. When we speak of impermanence, we mean that everything in the world is impermanent. But in the language of Buddhist books, we say the five aggregates instead of everything in the world. Why do you say that the five aggregates are impermanent? What can you see that causes you to say they are impermanent? There must be signs or characteristics that point to their impermanence. These signs are like flags by which we understand that the five aggregates are impermanent. You all meditators know those characteristics. According to the Visuddhimagga, rise, fall, and change are the characteristics of impermanence. First, there is arising, then there is what is called change, becoming different or aging. Then there is falling, disappearing. You watch the aggregates and you see that they arise and last for a few brief moments and then disappear. When you see that they constantly arise, change, and disappear, you know from these characteristics or signs that the aggregates are impermanent. And you know that the characteristics of impermanence are rise, fall, and change. You may be familiar with the three stages of existence: arising, staying for a time, and then disappearing. So this cycle is going on and on and on the whole life. Arising, staying for a time, and then disappearing. They are known as the three sub-moments of one thought moment. When you see a state of mind arise, stay for a time, and then disappear, you know that this state is impermanent. Just knowing or seeing that something is impermanent must come from your own experience. It must not come from a book, it must not come from a teacher. This knowledge must come from within yourself. So do not be satisfied with what we read in books or hear in talks. We must see for ourselves. In order to see impermanence, as Venerable Sariputta did, practice is necessary. We need to do something to prove to ourselves that things are really impermanent. So what should we do? It is actually very simple. We should watch things, including the mind, just watch them, and we cannot fail to see that they arise and disappear. The whole day, the whole night, the whole week, the whole month, the whole year you are practicing. You cannot fail to see that they arise and disappear. When practicing vipassana meditation, sometimes you are making notes of your mind wanders, and you say wandering, 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 until it is finished. Then you come back to the home object. So through your own experience, you see for yourself that thought is impermanent because it arises, stay for a very short time, and then disappear. The impermanence of the five aggregates, the impermanence of mind and matter can be seen for yourself through the practice of vipassana meditation. Having seen the impermanence of things for yourself, there is no need to go by faith and blindly accept the statement of other people regarding the impermanence of the five aggregates. You yourself will be able to verify that it is true. If you practice again and again, if you pay close attention to objects appearing at the present moment, you cannot fail to see impermanence. It is very encouraging when through your own experience you can discover the secret of mind and matter as taught by the Buddha. That is what is called Sanditthika, an attribute of the Dhamma, meaning that things are to be seen by oneself and not just heard secondhand from another person. The commentary describes these characteristics in another way, although it means the same thing. It said that non-existence, after having been, is the characteristics of impermanence. Book language is different from everyday language, and sometimes it is used to impress other people. So when I say non-existence after having been is the characteristics of impermanence, you may be wondering what I am saying. So whatever we want to say should be put in the way that everybody will understand. Disappearing after arising is the characteristics of impermanence. Now you understand the meanings of impermanence. If you want to know whether a certain state is permanent or impermanent, you see if it disappears after arising. Rising, falling, breathing in and out, sitting, touching, thinking, planning. Every arising phenomena you closely observe, it is permanent or impermanent. See if it disappears or not disappear. You have to see if it disappears after arising. It is more important to see the disappearing than the arising. That is because if you see only the arising and not the disappearing, you may have the opposite understanding and think the state is permanent. So it is important to see the disappearing. However, disappearing is preceded by arising. When there is no arising, there can be no disappearing. So the two go together, arising and disappearing. When you see a state arise and disappear, you know that it is impermanent. So disappearing after arising is the characteristic mark or sign of impermanence. And the third question to be considered is, what is repeated seeing of impermanence? That is described as contemplation of impermanence, anicca nupassana. You already know the words anicca is impermanence. The word anupassana is made up of anu, means again and again, and pasana, seeing. So anupassana means seeing again and again, repeated seeing or repeated observation. But it is translated as contemplation. When anupassana is translated as contemplation, we may think that it means just thinking about impermanence. But that is not really seeing it. You can force yourself to seem to understand by saying impermanent, 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 but that is not real understanding of impermanence either. You must be careful not to deceive yourself with false assumption. Sometimes people say, oh, it is impermanent, that is impermanent, and think that they really know the impermanence of something. Actually, what they are doing is just repeating like parrots. The real impermanence that we need to see in order to gain vipassana knowledgement is the moment-to-moment impermanence. The other kinds of superficial impermanence can be understood without meditation. You drop a glass and it breaks, and you say, oh, it is impermanence. You don't need meditation to understand the kinds of impermanence. You just know it. Or when somebody dies and you say, oh, he is impermanent. That kinds of understanding is not called vipassana knowledge. It cannot lead to dispassion towards the five aggregates. Without dispassion towards the five aggregates, there can be no fading away of mental defilements and no attainments of enlightenment. Superficial understanding of impermanence cannot help us to be dispassionate towards the aggregates or disenchanted with mind and matter. It will not lead to our enlightenment. These kinds of understanding cannot help us, so it is very important to cultivate and gain the deeper understanding of real impermanence, not the superficial kind. Anicca is the repeated seeing of impermanence while you are observing the rise and fall of the aggregates. It is not understanding just by thinking or without observing the five aggregates. If it is real anicca, it must be the seeing of impermanence while you are in the process of watching the rise and fall of the aggregates during your vipassana meditation. If we are not practicing, there can be no anicca. We may have had real experience of anicca during during our practice of vipassana. But when we are out of practice, there is no anicca. There can be only the remembrance or memory of anicca. So there are three characteristics of phenomenal existence: anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering, and anatta, non-self. It is said that even when there is no Buddha in the world, anicca and dukkha, impermanence and suffering can be taught, but nobody except the Buddha can teach anatta, non-self. But there is a statement of the Buddha himself in one of the texts which said that when one characteristic is seen, the other two are also seen. So that means when you see anicca, you can see also dukkha and anatta. If you see impermanence, you also see suffering nature and non-self nature. However, it is said that anatta can be taught by Buddhas only. So when there are no Buddhas, can you really get anicca nupassana? Can anicca nupassana be taught? The sub-commentary makes the statement and say that the kinds of impermanence taught when there is no Buddha must just be superficial impermanence, not real moment-to-moment impermanence. Because if you see moment-to-moment impermanence, when there is no Buddha, you also will see the non-self nature without the Buddha. So the sub-commentary say that even the impermanence and suffering said to be taught during the time when there is no Buddha must be just superficial nature and superficial dukkha, not the real nature and dukkha that we see through our practice of vipassana meditation. Nature and then dukkha. The five aggregates are called dukkha, suffering. Because five aggregates are constantly oppressed by rise and fall, that is one of three reasons given in the commentaries. And the second reason the aggregates are called dukkha is because they are the basic of suffering and they are the seeds of suffering. Because we have body, we have these aggregates, we aging, we have body and we have khanda, we have these aggregates. So we have physical pain, mental pain, and finally we die. So the aggregates are dukkha because they are the basic of suffering, they are the seeds of suffering. And the third reason is because there are five aggregates, there is suffering, and as we ourselves are the five aggregates, we suffer. We suffer a lot because of the five aggregates. We see something we don't want to see, and we suffer. We hear something we don't want to hear, and there is suffering. We don't want to be sad. We don't want to be depressed, but we do get sad, and we do get depressed, and we suffer. Because of these five aggregates, we have to endure all of these suffering. If there were no five aggregates, there would be no suffering. But because we are five aggregates, there will be aging, sickness, and death, and so we suffer. We encounter all of this misery simply because of the five aggregates. So they are called dukkha, suffering, because they are the basic of suffering. In this sense, the five aggregates of clinging are also called dukkha. The third reason given in that they are called dukkha because they are fearsome, they are fearful, they are dreadful. Because of these five aggregates, we undergo constant suffering, so they are fearful because they bring aging, sickness, death, and other kinds of suffering. They are called dukkha. We must practice meditation in order to see and understand that the five aggregates are dukkha or suffering. And they are called suffering for three reasons. They are constantly oppressed by rise and fall. They are the basic of suffering, and they are fearsome. In order to include other meanings of suffering, nowadays dukkha is translated as unsatisfactory rather than suffering. So it is a little better. Anything that is impermanent is unsatisfactory. We want things to be permanent. We want ourselves to be permanent. We want to live permanently, but we will not get what we want. And because there is no satisfaction with these five aggregates, they are unsatisfactory. We need to understand three things. What is it that is dukkha? What is the characteristics of dukkha? And what is dukkha nupassana or seeing dukkha? What is it that is dukkha? When we say dukkha, we mean the five aggregates, which are also impermanent in nature. The same five aggregates that are impermanent are also suffering. So what is the characteristics, mark or signs of being dukkha, suffering? We see that the five aggregates, which comprise everything in the world, are oppressed continuously by rise and fall. So the characteristics of suffering, dukkha, is this constant oppression by rise and fall, which is continuous and never stops. There is not a single moment in our lives when we are not oppressed by rise and fall. And what is dukkha nupassana, or what is repeated seeing of dukkha? This means watching and noting the five aggregates during our vipassana meditation and seeing with our own eyes the continuous oppression by rise and fall. Dukkhanupassana is the understanding or knowledge you get from this observation of the five aggregates. Only when you observe the five aggregates and see them continuously oppressed by rise and fall, can this vipassana knowledge be gained and made your own. So this knowledge or this understanding that the five aggregates are dukkha can only be attained while you are actively engaged in practicing vipassana meditation. There is no other way to see the rise and fall of the aggregates Only when you are practicing vipassana and observing them as they rise and fall at the present moment, will you be convinced of their continuous oppression, and you will know that they are dukkha. This kind of knowledge is called dukkha nupassana and is the real seeing of dukkha. So the Venerable Sariputta said that a virtuous and instructed meditator should carefully attend to the five aggregates subject to clinging in order to see and understand them as suffering. This means that meditator must practice vipassana meditation. Here there are two kinds of suffering, superficial and real suffering. Superficial suffering does not need the practice of meditation in order to be understood. You cut your finger and then say, oh, it is dukkha, or you hit your knee against something and say it is dukkha. So in your life, you encounter a lot of suffering. This kind of understanding is superficial. The nature of dukkha is not really seen. You experience the unpleasant feeling involved and then see it as suffering. You just feel it and know it. Meditation is not needed to understand it. What we are concerned with here is real suffering, the deep understanding of real suffering, dukkha. So the commentary said that we must understand the three things. What is it that is dukkha? What is the characteristics of dukkha? And what is dukkha nupassana? The seeing of dukkha. What is it that is dukkha? That is easy to answer. The five aggregates. Five aggregates are called dukkha or suffering. When we say suffering, we mean both the five aggregates and the five aggregates of clinging. So it includes all of them. And what is the characteristics of dukkha? You must understand the meaning of the word dukkha correctly. Normally it means suffering, unpleasant feeling, but its meaning goes deeper than that. You must understand it according to the words of the Buddha. Whatever is impermanence is dukkha. Whatever is impermanent is suffering. Yadan nijan dan dukkha. So it is important to remember. Can you follow me? Whatever is impermanent is dukkha. Whatever is impermanent is suffering. So this we need to understand. The Buddha did not say that whatever is difficult to endure is suffering. Buddha said that whatever is impermanent is suffering. Yada nijan dan dukkha. If you know something to be impermanent, you also know that it is suffering. So the meaning of the word suffering goes deeper than the surface meaning. we have to go deeply into it. In order to understand it, we must remember the saying of the Buddha that whatever is impermanent is suffering. If you want to know whether something is suffering, you have to see if it is permanent or impermanent. If it is impermanent, you will know that it is dukkha. So don't be afraid to see it is dukkha, it is true. So the word suffering in English and dukkha in Pali have more meanings than what appears on the surface. Dukkha means suffering, something difficult to endure, oppression. According to the Buddha's definition, whatever is impermanent is suffering. Why should something impermanent be called suffering? Sometimes we enjoy good food, good companionship. We enjoy many things in life. Are those things dukkha? Are those things suffering? When you are enjoying good food, do you say, I'm suffering? According to the Buddha, indeed, you are suffering. Why are such seemingly harmless activities called suffering? You understand the characteristics of suffering. The commentary gives 3 reasons why the 5 aggregates of clinging are called suffering. The first reason is that they are constantly oppressed by rise and fall. You must keep firmly in mind that constant oppression by rise and fall is the characteristic of dukkha. If you want to know whether or not something is dukkha, try to see whether it rises and falls. If it does, it has to be oppressed by rising and falling, and that oppression is what dukkha means. So all 5 aggregates, including the 5 aggregates of clinging, are called dukkha because they are constantly oppressed by rise and fall. You can look at everything in the world and you will see that everything is oppressed by rise and fall. And that rise and fall also are constantly oppressed by rise and fall. Can you find a single moment when there is no rise and fall? Can you find a single moment when the process of rise and fall stops? From the moment we take conception, this rise and fall begins to oppress us, and it goes on and on and on throughout our life. There is not a single moment when we are free from rise and fall. There is always rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall. When you see things during meditation, you note them as rising and falling, appearing and disappearing, one after another, maybe hundreds of objects. Then you get the impression that everything is oppressed by rising and falling. This rising and falling is a kind of oppression. Falling means destruction, which is a kind of oppression. And rising is a precursor to falling. It rises so that it can fall, and falling is also a kind of oppression. Rising and falling, appearing and disappearing, oppress the five aggregates every moment, creating continuous oppression. This constant oppression by rise and fall, appearing and disappearing, is the characteristics of dukkha. If you can understand dukkha in this way, you can accept the fact that enjoying delicious food is dukkha. Whatever we are enjoying is dukkha, because there is nothing that is not dukkha. We can accept the teaching of the Buddha that the five aggregates of clinging are suffering. So in the first sermon, Dhammacakka Sutta, Buddha said, Pinchupadana khandha dukkha. The five aggregates of clinging are suffering. So we have to stop our discourse for today. We will continue next time by practicing vipassana meditation, by observing every phenomena occurring at the six senses, by noting, rising, falling, sitting, stretching, bending, seeing, hearing, continuously and meticulously. May you see the nature, dukkha, anatta, three characteristics of the phenomena. May you be liberated from suffering. May you realize the real peace in the very near future.